Good evening and welcome to Sportszone. I'm your host, Mackenzie Freeman. And before we get into March Madness, we're going to take a look at some UNT softball as they took the sweep over Tulsa. Here to recap the series with me is Adam O'Day and Julian Lofgren. Guys, let's take a look back at Game 1. UNT wins 1-0 in extra innings, walk-off style. Just perfect softball when you really look at it. Adam, what successes did the Mean Green have that game?
Yeah, UNT played great defense, had a gem of a start for Mackenzie Childers, 8 innings, no runs allowed, and 7 strikeouts. And just Sierra Simon, Kaylee Damble put on a display of great defense as well. So really, outside of the hitting, not much bad.
Right, and Julian, what would you say were some successes for the Mean Green?
UNT, great job. When you allow the team you're playing to only get 4 hits, that's a recipe for success. So great job by the pitching and the entire defensive staff, and also just great job by Molly Rainey. Not many bats being able to get going for UNT. Great job to be able to put the ball over the fence and get the 1 run for the UNT to win that game. So just an overall great team win for the Mean Green.
Right, and one thing we highlighted last week was really how good this Tulsa softball team is. We said it would come down to the pitching, and really it did that. Would y'all say that one of the main challenges that UNT faced in Game 1 was Tulsa's bullpen, Julian?
Yes. I mean, we're not a whole lot better. I said Tulsa only got 4 hits. We weren't a whole lot better. We only had 5. So just kind of unable to get runners in scoring position. And then when we did, we just weren't able to capitalize on those. And then just, other than Molly Rainey, we didn't have a whole lot of success actually getting the ball in the air and getting a chance to actually put runs on the board.
And Adam, what challenges would you say UNT faced?
Right, you touched on it earlier, like 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position and only 5 hits. So, I mean, really, hitting was an issue all series long for UNT. So,
yeah, and before we get into our MVP, we do need to shout out Tulsa because they did a very good job, especially, like I said, with the pitching. So, Adam, realistically, how good was Tulsa in Game 1?
Yeah, no, they're going to be a tough out in the conference tournament. Arguably one of the best teams in the conference, and, you know, there's a reason they were 5-1 entering the series with us. So, I mean, I'm afraid to play them in the tournament.
Yeah, it would be tough to face off against them again. Julian, what did you think about Tulsa's performance?
Tulsa, they came out and they showed why they are an upper tier in the American Conference in softball. They're one of the better teams in the conference, and it's not like we came out and blew them out of the water. We had good games with them every single game. So Tulsa really showed that they're a team that's going to be able to compete at a high level in this conference. And I was surprised, though, that the UNT was able to actually keep up with Tulsa in this series.
Yeah, and UNT, they just continue to live for the drama. As we look at Game 2, again, they win 1-0, walk-off home run style. Michaela Smith, you know, she sends one flying to get UNT the win at home. Adam, how good was her performance?
Yeah, no, she did a great job Game 2 defensively, and obviously our lone hit was her walk-off home run. So great job, Michaela Smith. And shout out to Skylar Savage. 21 really did something for me. AAC Pitcher of the Week for this week.
Well, Adam, you just touched on my point. So, Julian, I'll give the question to you. How good was the pitching in Game 2 by Skylar Savage?
Skylar Savage was lights out in Game 2. She only allowed 5 hits the entire game, which is absolutely unreal. And then she just really, Tulsa was unable to get contact. And when they'd get 1 hit and then 2 strikeouts. And then you're just not going to win games that way. We were unable to get hitters to get hit after hit, and they just weren't able to do that, just get a rhythm at the plate. Skylar Savage completely limited Tulsa's offensively.
Right, and yes, Skylar Savage did allow 5 hits, but for those not to turn into any offense, I mean, Adam, how good was our defense that game?
Yeah, our defense was great. Tulsa left 7 runners stranded. So, I mean, great job by Sierra Simon, Michaela Smith, just everybody in that defense.
Right, and Julian, lastly for Game 2, who would you say stepped up? Because there's a number of people you could give that award to.
I think for me it's got to be Michaela Smith. Kind of similar to Molly Rainey in Game 1. If she doesn't get that home run, who knows how long we're playing? Because the pitching from both teams, I'll give credit to Tulsa on that too. The pitching from both teams was light out that day, so I got to give it to Michaela Smith. She was able to get run over the plate, so just absolute great job to Michaela Smith in Game 2.
Yeah, who would you give Game 2's MVP to, Adam?
Oh, got to go Michaela Smith. Not just with her solo home run, but also with her just outstanding defense. You know, she's great in both aspects, which is why, you know, she's starting every day. So.
Right, and then for Tulsa, Who impressed you on Tulsa's end in Game 2? I definitely would go with their pitcher, Annika Anderson. She was undefeated before going into this game, and to pitch 7 outings, only allow 1 hit. It's unfortunate that it is the game-winning home run, but she was amazing, wouldn't y'all say?
Oh, definitely. And she also had 8 strikeouts in Game 2, so great job.
Yeah. And moving on to Game 3, this one was slightly different. UNT wins 3-2, and Skylar Savage stepped up on the pitching. It wasn't Wagner's best start, so how would you say the bullpen did in that game, Adam?
Yeah, so our bullpen did okay. Skylar Savage was lights out, 2 2/3 innings, but Mackenzie Childers didn't have her best game, only retired 1 batter, walked 2 batters, and then was pulled for Savage. So, I mean, great job by Savage to just step up, keep UNT in the game.
And Julian, what were your thoughts on UNT's bullpen?
I think the main thing that kind of didn't help UNT this game is Tulsa actually was able to make contact and get runs across the board. So it wasn't a great day for UNT's bullpen and their pitching staff and all. They did what they needed to do to get the win, and that's kind of just, in this point when conference play, that's what you're just trying to do. So as long as UNT is getting the win, I think I can overlook some of the bad things that UNT struggled with.
Right, and a couple of people were able to get on base. Michaela Smith and Molly Rainey, again, making their impact. They both doubled in the game. So what were y'all's thoughts on the hitting, Adam?
Yeah, by far, this was our best hitting game of the series. Michaela Smith went 2 for 4. Lexi Cobb, she's not having a great year at the plate, but she went 1 for 3 and had an infield single that tied up the game. So, I mean, offensively, there's at least some good to look at.
And Julian, your thoughts?
Kind of like he said, I think this game we were the most consistent to play, which is good to see. It shows that we're making improvement over the weekend. And kind of like you said, Michaela Smith and Molly Rainey both did a great job at the plate. Is we weren't just getting home runs in this game. We were actually getting doubles and then singles and getting runs across the plate that way, rather than just hitting solo shots over the fence. So I just think consistency was the best game that UNT had, consistently hitting at the plate.
Right, and for this series, I would say up to this point, this has been UNT's most important series. I mean, we're still early in conference play, but how big was sweeping Tulsa for the Mean Green, Julian?
This was huge. Tulsa was atop the American, and now UNT is tied with Florida Atlantic atop the American Conference, and Tulsa is now sitting at 4th. So being able to sweep a team of Tulsa's caliber, it's got to do a huge thing for the mindset of our players on this team. So I just think getting a clean sweep of a high-end team like Tulsa has just got to do great things for the program in total.
And Adam, your thoughts?
Yeah, Rodney DeLonge even said just winning the series would be great for this Mean Green team. And as we mentioned, we swept Tulsa. So huge for the standings, and hopefully we're going to be able to build on this momentum.
Yeah, like you said, the sweep was huge, but going into this series, I thought UNT would still win the series, but it would be more 2-1. So how important was Tulsa not to get any wins? Even if UNT would have taken the series, being able to say you swept Tulsa had to be huge for them, right, Julian?
Yes. I think for me, just kind of like you said, being able to say, like, Tulsa didn't even win a game. We completely swept them. UNT dominated, in my opinion, in every game, as the pitching in all 3 games, in my opinion, except maybe the third. In the first 2 games, the pitching was lights out. Tulsa was unable to do anything at the plate. In fact, they had less than 10 hits in those 2 games combined, so just lights out from UNT's pitching this weekend.
And Adam, your thoughts?
Yeah, huge deal for us to sweep Tulsa. You know, it'll be a really important come seeding time for the conference tournament. So, I mean, hopefully we'll be able to get a high enough seed, and Tulsa will be a low enough seed to where they'll be a little bit more fatigued in the later rounds.
Right, and Julian, how did you feel about the coaching this series by Rodney DeLonge? I mean, it's a hard series, and you still managed to get the win. So what did you think about?
I think if you really look at the coaching battle, I think he completely blew Tulsa's coach out of the water completely. He put girls in the games that he knew were going in with confidence, and they kind of showed it. They mowed down Tulsa's hitters looking at our pitching, and then defensively, he had the girls ready to come out and play, and they were showing it. They were making flashy defensive plays. So I think he had our girls really ready to go. So just an absolutely fantastic job by Coach DeLonge.
Right, and UNT will face off against South Florida in their next series. So we're going to put down the bats and pick up the sticks as we take a look at the Dallas Stars when we come back.
I'm here to rescue you.
Oh, my prince.
not so fast.
This story is going to be awesome.
Did you know you have access to video equipment like DVDs, video games, and cameras? That's right, you do. Come on down to Chilton Library and fulfill your media dream. Located on the bottom floor next to the student sculpture. Hope to see you there soon.
Hey girl, you know you look good. I like the way you move and groove. I'm not sure.
Ugh, a 20-minute walk? I don't want to do this right now.
Don't worry, you can just use Transit.
Transit? What's that?
Transit is a mobile app that provides real-time tracking to connect buses, UNT shuttles, and even A trains. Simply download the app, then tap on the search bar and type where you want to go. In a matter of seconds, you get results for all available routes. And the best part of it is, it's completely free for UNT students. What are you doing?
I'm downloading it right now.
Download Transit today and remember, make life better without a car.
Welcome back to Sportszone. The Stars had a full weekend of hockey, and here to recap those games with me is Hunter Paris and Adam C. Guys, we're going to take a look at the Stars versus Penguins. Stars get the win. Who stood out to you, Hunter?
Yeah, for me, I got to go with number 18, Sam Steele, man. Kind of a guy that doesn't get much love on this team. They call him Sammy Sosa. 2 shots on goal. The Stars did a great job keeping the puck in attacking ice all night long. And, yeah, I got to go with Sam Steele.
I got to agree with that one. Steele, that whole line in general is so crucially underrated for this team. But you know what? I'm going to go with Ben. Has had a bit of an off year and randomly exploded in the Pens game. Currently 7 goals, 8 assists in his last 11 games, which I think is really good so far. And he helps this team a lot.
Yeah, Jamie Benn, he stood out to me as well. He's on into this game, he was on a 3-game goal streak, and he's continuing that streak going with the 2 goals he had in that game. And speaking of goals, how did y'all feel about the goaltending against the Penguins?
I thought Ottinger played fine, although I will say being up 4-1 early in the third period provides a lot of confidence for a goaltender, but he seems to have rebounded because it feels like 10 to 15 days ago, people were worried about the playoffs and that maybe Ottinger is starting to lose it a little bit before the playoffs, but I think he's recovering a little.
Yeah, I agree. He's recovering a little bit. Scott Wedgwood has really been just so great in that backup role this year, 15-6 record. You know, looking on the other side of things, Tristan Jarry, man, he had a rough go at it. Only
absolutely.
an 800 save percentage for the Penguins, but for the Stars, like you mentioned, Adam, I'd have to agree. I think Ottinger, you know, he'll be okay. A great goaltender in the NHL, and he's been big for the Stars this year.
Absolutely.
Right, and what would you say the Stars did well as a team that game?
I would say what the Stars did well is they do the little things right. They have constant pressure on the team's defensive end. Yep. Always pressuring the netminder. It got to Jarry, we could tell that. Grinding the defense down, getting them tired, not letting them get an inch. If they give an inch, we take a mile. And that type of approach helped us win a lot of games, and the Penguins felt that wrath.
Yeah, 100% they did, and you know, the Stars just took advantage of what the Penguins were giving them, kept the puck in the attacking half. Just a lot of fun to watch it when the puck is on the other side of the ice if you're a Stars fan. So a lot of fun, especially when you sweep a team like Pittsburgh twice this year. And yeah, they got it done, and a great game on Saturday.
Right, and they did get the win 4-2. Did y'all see any struggles for the Stars against the Penguins?
The only thing I'm going to mention is sometimes it takes Ottinger a bit of time to settle into these games. Sometimes you get up those early goals, but also that's been a Stars problem for the last few years, if I'm being honest. I've noticed that with Stars goaltending. They either give up a goal in the first 2 minutes or they don't give one up for the first 2 periods.
Right.
It's a great tradition. No, it's not actually. I'm being sarcastic.
No, they got to be better in the first period in general. They've been great in the second period and the third period as of late. They got to be better in that first period. Obviously, going down 1-0 is not the most ideal situation in hockey. Got to be better in the first period.
Especially with playoffs coming up.
Yes.
Right. And I would have to say that I feel like part of Ottinger maybe not having his best season is the defense. I saw a stat somewhere that said he's on his record year for most shots against and his worst save percentage. So how important is the defense going to be heading into playoffs to kind of step up and help out Ottinger?
It's really funny because look at it 4 years ago, our little Stanley Cup final run that we had in the pandemic era. It was the opposite. Our offense couldn't score.
Yeah.
And it was goaltending and defense that won the day. Now it's the complete opposite. The defense is taking a step down a little bit skill-wise, and the offense has come unglued, especially that second line with Duchesne, Marchment, Sagan. Beautiful.
I love watching good defense in football. I love watching great offense in hockey. I think that's way more valuable than having a good defense. Obviously, it's nice to have a good defense, but I mean, we got two great goaltenders. We're going to be fine on defense. I just love how often we're scoring goals, scoring it at a crazy rate.
Right, and moving on to the second game of the weekend, the Stars went up against the Coyotes and won 4-2. Again, another great performance by the Stars. So what would you say went right for them, Adam?
First of all, got our 7th straight win versus the Coyotes. But to talk about what went right, Otter had really good goalie play.
Yep.
It's picked up tremendously, has given up 2 goals or fewer in this whole 4-game winning streak. Sagan, Duchesne, as I mentioned earlier, just the crucial line to this team, and I will go out and say that on that limb. 3 points each, both had 1 goal, 2 assists. Duchesne had that empty netter to seal the game. They did struggle to get past Ingram a little bit, but they're not the only ones, and they won't be the only ones.
Right.
Yeah, 35 team shots on goal for the Stars. Crazy number there. They outshot the Coyotes 35-16. The Coyotes were more physical, had a bunch more hits, but I mean, Stankoven, 6 shots on goal, man. That kid is special, and this offense is just so fun to watch.
Oh, I love this. I love that kid so much. He's so good. He has been a jolt in this team. It's awesome.
100%.
Got in the league and sort of took off once he got some playing time. It's been fun to watch Stankoven play.
Absolutely.
And then one common theme I'm seeing is the veterans have stepped up in this last 5-6 game stretch. We talked about Ben, we've talked about Duchesne, and even Seguin against the Coyotes. He got some action. So how important is it for the Stars to have those veterans step up late in the year?
That's incredibly important, especially come playoff time, because as much as we can talk about Robertson, Hintz, and them, what matters the most is the guys with playoff experience. They're going to help you through this playoff journey. And starting to have these older guys that have kind of had struggles, Jamie Benn, unfortunately, having him be able to rise up, it gives me a lot of confidence for come playoff time.
Right.
I could not agree with you more. And, like you mentioned, Heiskanen, Johnston, Rupe, all those guys are so fun to watch. But when you get to the playoffs, it matters about the guys that have been there and seen it and have done it. And I hope that they can bring a Stanley Cup to Dallas this year. I mean, here's the most important thing is they finish the regular season. The Coyotes are not a very good team. We need to beat and continue to beat bad teams. We got to take advantage, continue to get points, try and get first in the Central. We're second right now. It's going to be interesting to see, but we got to take care of business against these bad teams, and we got another bad team we're playing tomorrow night.
Right, and you kind of stole my next question out of my mouth. How important was this win late in the year? The Star schedule isn't very hard right now. So how important was that win, Adam?
Oh, they needed it. Losing the Coyotes would have been a huge momentum killer. Also gives Ottinger more confidence. That's who I'm really focusing on right now is Jake Ottinger. Guy that had some struggles, people were worrying, and now he seems to have picked it back up. And even if it's against less skilled teams like the Coyotes, you can still gain confidence in those games. Why do you think Alabama schedules Western Carolina every 2 years? Because they want to get some confidence in their players, and Ottinger can hopefully get some through these games.
Yeah, no, like I mentioned right before you asked that question, you just got to beat bad teams. You got to beat up on bad teams. The Stars have not done that against the Sharks. I know we're about to talk about that. They haven't done that against the Sharks this year, but they got to continue to do it tomorrow night and throughout the rest of the season whenever they're playing teams that they should beat on paper.
Right, and speaking of the Sharks, as Hunter mentioned, the Stars will next be taking on the Sharks. Guys, the last time we played the Sharks, it was 2 very close games. Do y'all think that this game will be the same as those, or do you think the Stars may pull away with it?
I hope not, for the sake of the health of my heart, because that 7-6 game was fun. Good Lord, that was very anxiety-inducing. It's kind of like wrestling in a way, and we can never get that clean win on the Sharks. We always got to get that metaphorical chair shot in, the little bumps here and there. We got to cheat a little bit to get past the Sharks. It's weird. We struggle against them, and unfortunately, Stars trend with the lesser record teams. I'm not very hopeful.
I think the key tomorrow to not making it a close game, score first. Get out on them early. They're not a very good team. 16-46 and 8 this year. A minus 130 goal differential. They're horrible. They are horrible. Get out, score early, and let's have some fun tomorrow night. We'll go celebrate on Fry Street. We'll go celebrate at Potbelly's. Let's go have some fun tomorrow night. Let's just take care of business, guys. Let's go.
Right, and Adam, what will it take for the Stars to do what Hunter says and take care of business?
Well, for one, I'm going to bring up goalie stats here. I've been talking about auditor. Might as well talk about Blackwood and Capokin. 39 combined losses on the season, not a single one with a .9 save percentage. None of them at double-digit wins. One of them at 20 losses. I'm sorry. Just score, please. Keep the offensive pressure. Do what you did against the Penguins. Play that exact game, and you should win 5-1 or 5-2. Please.
Yes, 100%. Mackenzie Blackwood, one of the worst goalies in the league. And I feel bad for him because he has a terrible defense in front of him. But at the same time, I mean, he is not very good. Just get to him early. Just score first and make him uncomfortable. And it should be an easy win for the Stars.
Talk about a guy that was really hyped, like Mackenzie
Yes.
Blackwood.
Right.
Because like 2 or 3 years ago, that dude was him. And I was like, this is the next guy. And it's like, no,
Yeah,
he's not.
now he's rotting away in San Jose, man. I feel bad for him. Don't give up, Mackenzie. Better days are coming.
And very quickly, guys, what is your score prediction for the game? Adam?
4-3 Sharks.
Oh,
4-3
man.
Sharks.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't trust them tomorrow. I don't. I'm not going to trust them.
That's a very Dallas Stars thing to do. 5-2. Give me the Stars tomorrow night. They'll take care of business. They're red hot right now. Let's continue it that way.
I'm going to take 5-4 in overtime. Stars pull out the win. And when we come back, we'll take a look at March Madness.
Willis Library, located at the University of North Texas. It has computers, printers, and the building is open 24/7. By going online, you can book up to an hour of reserved space at one of the many private study rooms. Many of them are equipped with whiteboards, a table, and a TV to hook up to your computer. Textbooks can be checked out for free with a student ID. They also have many of these in ebook forms. This is still a library, so always remember to be quiet and respectful of other surroundings, especially in certain places where talking is not allowed. For example, the 3rd and 4th floor are completely quiet. As you can see, Willis Library has many options for students, with it offering many media sources and staying open all the time.
Hey Alex, this guy on the internet says he wants to give me money.
That sounds suspicious.
What do you mean?
Typically, strangers who promise you money on the internet have their own best interest in mind. They often use bounced checks, which will disappear shortly after depositing, but not before they've asked for some money in return.
So he doesn't really want to spoil me?
No.
Well, then what should I do?
The best way to handle it is to block and report the suspicious message, or even consult local law enforcement if you've already fallen victim.
So I guess we aren't going to Key West for spring break.
No.
Good evening and welcome back to Sportszone. I'm your host, Mackenzie Freeman, and we just had a full weekend of basketball as both the men's and women's played in their first and second rounds. And here to talk about the men's first and second rounds with me is Kinsey Neely and Steven Lucero. Guys, what was your favorite game in round one? Steven?
Yeah, for me, there were a lot of them, but it was actually Dayton, Nevada, just because of the comeback that Dayton was able to do at the end of the game. I'll throw around the term favorite lightly just because I picked Nevada, so it wasn't my personal favorite, but to me, just the effort they showed to end that game, to me, that's what March is all about, and that was really a big win for Dayton.
Right, and Kinsey, your favorite?
I mean, it was pretty difficult to choose one, but I'm going to have to go with Colorado and Florida just because I really, like going into it, I really thought Florida was going to win. I chose Colorado just because I was hoping something good would happen, and it did. And they played all the way to the end, and it was a really tough game for Florida. I mean, it was a sad loss to see, and a lot of people were messed up with their brackets and everything. But, I mean, I was pretty happy, and it was a great game. Everyone did amazing.
Right, and my favorite game was the Wisconsin versus James Madison, just because of watching James Madison and their offense. They had really good team ball that game. They had 12 assists, and they had 4 players within the double digits. And moving on, as James Madison versus Wisconsin was an upset, we've got quite a few upsets that we can talk about. Let's start with game 1, BYU versus Duquesne. How did BYU lose, guys?
I mean, it was hard. It was a really tough game to watch. I mean, I had BYU winning it, but Duquesne really came to play. They did their thing. That's the biggest part. But like their defense was amazing. Their points were amazing. BYU, they had amazing defense. I think their rebounds were somewhere like 14, 15, 16 rebounds, but it wasn't enough for Duquesne because their field goal percentage was about 46, 47%. They did great.
And Steven?
Yeah, they really played well. I thought that, honestly, from the beginning, BYU just came out kind of soft. Really,
yeah.
I think Duquesne really wanted it more. And just from the beginning with BYU, I was seeing just, flopping, just not great defense, not, boxing out really. Just those fundamental things that, I think it's easy to take for granted. But when you have a team like Duquesne that's hungry and really wants it,
right,
they take advantage, and they did.
And even for BYU, I mean, as you mentioned, they were a little soft, but they did, somewhat try to come back, and they just could not get the win. How cool is it to you guys that Duquesne was able to pull out this win, though, over BYU?
I mean, I'm glad for them. I love seeing small schools win. I always bet on small schools to win because, they're amazing. You never know what's going to happen. You never get because they don't get that shining light on them as D1 schools do. They don't get that funding. They don't get that attention. But these small schools coming into this March Madness going crazy,
right,
I love to see it.
Absolutely, and I think that's the great thing about March Madness that you don't see in any other sport. I mean, I love NCAA football, it's great, but you have Alabama, you have these top schools every year. In college, anyone can shine. Steph Curry went to Davidson. I think it's things like that. Every year, some Cinderella team reminds us that anything's possible when it comes to March Madness.
And speaking of small schools beating big schools, I think the biggest upset from the weekend was Oakland versus Kentucky. It was a Jack Golke masterclass. I mean, he was lights out from the 3, played 36 minutes and had 32 points. And the craziest thing about Jack Golke is the amount of threes to just regular field goals he's taken. It was like 8 to 300 something, and that was just crazy. So what were your guys' thoughts on that game?
Yeah, the three-point shooting was such an X factor. I mean, just looking at it, they shot 48% from 3. I mean, when you make almost half of your threes, it's going to be pretty good. And to me, the reason that I was actually surprised by Kentucky is I actually had them going a lot farther because of their three-point shooting.
Yeah.
And, that's what I was expecting. I'm like, this is a team that, even though they've had some struggles, I think they can make a run because of their three-point shooting. Instead, we see Oakland doing it. And to me, three-point shooting is so valuable, and that's why they got such a great upset.
Right.
I completely agree. I mean, I did the same thing. I was really hoping that Kentucky would come back and they would do the same thing they've been doing all season, these amazing threes, these amazing winning games. But instead, they got into the court, and around the second half, that's whenever it just went straight. It was just all Oakland. There was a little bit of a chance towards the end, but Oakland really had it on lock the whole time. And it's because they were able to play an amazing offense, and Kentucky was not there defensively.
Right, and then the last upset of the first round I'd like to talk about is Oregon and South Carolina. And I'm going to be honest, because of their seeding, this was an upset. But I think this was one upset that a lot of people saw coming. Would you say so?
Yeah, I agree. I actually did go with Oregon on this one. So, this one didn't surprise me too much.
Yeah.
They played a good game, I think both offensively and defensively. And, when you come in hot, especially, coming off of, a regular season that is so long, when you can get hot before tournament time, that makes a huge difference. And Oregon was able to take advantage.
Right.
Yeah, they sure were. I'm a big South Carolina girl. I stand by that with my whole heart. Anything that's South Carolina, I'm there, and I'm voting on them. And unfortunately, I did. And that is where I am now. I should have went with Oregon. I saw how great they were, but South Carolina was just too good for me. And then you have Jermaine Cousinard.
Oh, yeah.
40 points in that one game. Jeez Louise, that broke my heart to see. But I'm actually really proud of Oregon because it's been a little bit since they've been able to show their talent at this like magnitude. So I'm glad of it. But South Carolina really broke my heart.
Yeah, and speaking of South Carolina, Clemson played Baylor, and they ended up upsetting Baylor 72-64 in the second round. What happened to Baylor there, Steven?
Yeah, what a game that was, too, especially at the end. You know, I think Baylor, similar to like we talked about with BYU, just came out a little bit slow, a little bit soft at the beginning, and they were able to crawl back into the game. At one point, they had 2 free throws to tie the game. Unfortunately, neither one of them was able to drop. And, you know, this is something that we've talked about before, being able to perform in the clutch.
Right.
And, you know, that's what makes teams, you know, March Madness level. And, you know, Baylor, I think they played well, you know, throughout the season, in the first round also, but just they weren't able to do quite enough. And Clemson, they took advantage. They really played a good game.
Right. And Kinsey, what did you think went wrong for Baylor?
I completely agree. I mean, it was just they weren't able to hold their game. They weren't able to keep playing as much as they could play in the past. They're an amazing team. They make amazing shots. They're like defensively, they're amazing. So they are like offensively as well. But Clemson, they took advantage of those little weak points they started seeing, especially in the second half, and they ran with it. And I was glad to see it, of course, but I was kind of sad for Baylor because they are a great team. So,
right. And then one of the games that kind of shocked me the most was Gonzaga versus Kansas. And not because Gonzaga won and that was an upset, but because I thought this would be, you know, an overtime thriller. You got Hunter Dickinson on one side, and then you've got, you know, just the guys in Gonzaga who really came out in the clutch. I mean, what went wrong for Kansas, Steven?
Yeah, it was, I'll say before that, just I picked Samford. So, but going back to that, I say that for a reason because that game went deep. And even though Kansas, it looked like they were going to be able to get an easy win, Samford crawled back into that game, and they made it tough at the end. I mean, you can argue about the controversy of that foul, but they made Kansas work. And they talked about fatigue, and I think that was a real thing. To me, that's not an excuse. This is March. It's time to go all out.
Right.
But I think that game really did have an impact on them because they played great in the first half. They were neck and neck, and I think we all thought we were in for a type of overtime thriller.
Right, exactly.
But they truly just ran out of gas in the second half.
Yeah. And Kinsey, what would you say your favorite game of round 2 was?
My favorite game of round 2, I mean, I'm a big Purdue girl. I really have them winning it all. I love Zach Edey. What can I say? So seeing Zach Edey do his thing, Purdue do their thing whenever it was against Utah State, wow. I mean, is Utah State a good school? Of course. Was I expecting a blowout in this game? Of course. But 106 to 67?
Yeah, it was outrageous.
That was insane. I was so glad to see. It was a good game to watch, and I was just like giddy the whole time because I was like, I'm doing good. So thank you, Zach Edey.
Yeah, my favorite game was definitely the Tennessee versus Texas game. Not even because I'm a big Tennessee fan, but because the UT versus UT, like fans get into it, players get into it. Even, you know, football coaches like Josh Heupel get into it, and it was just fun. And I feel like Texas versus Tennessee, no matter what the sport is, women's basketball, men's basketball, it's a battle, no matter what their seedings are. So, did it matter that Texas was a 7 seed? Clearly, it didn't. I mean, that game really came down to the wire. Steven, in the Sweet 16, do you have any upsets you can see happening?
Yeah, it's tougher to predict, you know, I think with upsets now at this point, just because we're getting a little bit narrowed down. But the one team I want to focus on is, even though they are a 2 seed, Iowa State has really flown under the radar for a lot of the season and this point as well. So I really look for them to make a deep run.
Right, and Kinsey?
I'm going to say Illinois and Iowa. I have Illinois winning it all because Terrence Shannon Jr. is able to like average 23 points a game. He's great.
Right, well, we'll have to wait until this weekend to see what happens in the Sweet 16. But when we come back, we'll take a look at the flip side and talk about women's March Madness.
All right, look up here. 1, 2, 3. Mom, Dad, I got it.
You're right, Mom. I have.
Welcome back to Sportszone. I'm here with Nash Lowry and Mason Brenham as we take a look at some women's March Madness. First, I just want to talk about the overall talent pool in March Madness this year. You've got players like Caitlin Clark, Paige Buckers, Haley Van Lith. Just, Nash, talk about the talent of these different teams this year.
Well, one of my favorite parts about watching really March Madness going on through this specific year and a little bit of last year is really my first time being introduced, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like with the introduction of Caitlin Clark into kind of the scope of women's college basketball, she's made the competition around her really rise up.
Right.
Like everybody's trying to match up with Caitlin Clark because she's getting so much pub. And rightfully so. She's one of the greatest women to ever touch a basketball. Just check out some of these highlights. Like finding a dime over in the corner, that's insane. But really, Haley Van Lith, all those other girls, rising up, it seems like the game now is more star-based whenever it comes to college than ever before. You look at the guys, it's mostly team games with some surprising pop-outs from some bench players, but the girls, it's all star power.
And I think looking at UConn and Paige Buckers, I think she's also kind of been one of those star caliber player like Caitlin Clark. I think this year the talent is revolutionary to women's basketball, and I think that's going to help shape the sport in the future.
Right, and we can talk about Paige Buckers all day. In her win versus Holy Cross, she put up 27 points, went 3 of 9 from the three-point, and 8 of 19 from field goal. Just a really great game, and then Iowa ended up winning 91-65.
What can you do?
Right. I feel like there's not much you can really do up against Caitlin Clark and Iowa when you're a 16 seed.
Right, but then in the first round, she immediately came back 11 of 19 from the field, 28 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists. It seems like I'm saying, that's nearly a triple-double, you know what I'm saying? 3 steals to go along with that. You talk about Haley Van Lith, she doesn't really had much success in the first round, but against their most recent game against South Carolina, 40 minutes, 14 points, 6 rebounds. Like I said earlier, star power really just going off this tournament.
Right, and how exciting is it to see Paige Buckers in March Madness this year? We didn't get to see her last year due to her injury. I think I saw somewhere that it's been like 600 days since she was in March Madness or something like that. So how entertaining is it for her to be in it now?
Well, I think obviously whenever you have a player at her star caliber, whenever they miss the tournament, that is going to be hard for a fan to see. But having her come back and putting up a dominant performance, not just, whenever someone has a long injury that they recover from, maybe, it takes a slow time, a little bit of a process. But for her to come out dominant right out of the gate, I think that just speaks to the talent that she has. And I think, yes, I know Caitlin's leaving after this year, but I can't remember exactly if Paige is one more year, but I think if she does stay one more year, I think she could be the next Caitlin Clark.
That's a good point, Mason. Not only the talent, but also her mentality, her ability to stick through confidently, strongly,
right.
Keep uplifted feelings throughout all of those 600 some odd days and returning back like she never left, really, almost like a player reborn, like she shed a shell. It's really great to see.
Right, and Mason, one thing I like that you pointed out was you have Caitlin Clark this year, and if Paige elects to stay, you'll have Paige next year, and then you've got Juju Watkins following in her footsteps. How cool is it that for the next 3 to 4 years, we'll have some sort of anchor for women's basketball?
I think it's great for the sport as a whole. Everybody has been talking about the rise of women's sports just in general, but especially college basketball. And I think, yes, obviously it's been a sport that's been dominated by the men in March Madness, but I think having those 3 players to be the backbone of the sport and kind of represent the sport, I think it's going to be great. And I think it also leads to future possibility superstars coming through the NCAA and maybe making their own mark.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then we're going to go look in round 1 of the tournament. There wasn't a lot of upsets. I feel like that's just how women's basketball is right now. Your really talented teams are really talented, but there was one upset. Middle Tennessee got the win over Louisville, 71-69. What went wrong for Louisville?
I don't really think it's more about what went wrong for Louisville. I think Louisville didn't lose this one. I feel like Middle Tennessee definitely won it. I mean, check out those stats. 22, 6 of 14, 3 of 5 from 3, coupled with her teammate Gregory, 24 points along. If you have two players in double digits, not only double digits, both scoring 20, I believe that was nearly half of the team's points, right? In that game, they won that one against Louisville, you know what I'm saying, 71-69. So that's almost accounting for half of the whole points. So that was a tremendous game to watch, but it wasn't because of Louisville's fault. It was more because Middle Tennessee came out and showed out.
Right. Mason, your thoughts?
Well, and I think, honestly, the only thing that might have gone wrong for Louisville was that last shot. I mean, if that shot's maybe 2 or 3 inches closer to the basket, it might go in, and we're talking about a whole different ball game. So I think this isn't like what was that Nash said. I think this isn't about what Louisville did wrong. I think it's about what Middle Tennessee State did right. And I think while they didn't beat LSU in the second round, I think that also carried into their second round play.
Oh, I mean, in the second round against LSU, that first half, they put on an amazing performance. I believe they were neck and neck with them really until the second half, and then LSU kind of got back in gear.
really
and
just
played
what
their game.
really just what happens whenever you go up against such a good program.
Right.
I mean, it really did, wasn't really the best thing for a lot of fans watching the thing to see the only double-digit seed to make it out of the first round entirely, an 11 seed, Middle Tennessee, just to immediately get not exactly trounced because they did hold up, but to eventually lose sizably to LSU later on. It was kind of a sad sight. So really no room for kind of upsets in the first round.
Right, but in the second round, we do see, some of those seeds that are a little bit more even playing each other, and we did see an upset. Duke versus Ohio State. Duke won 75-63. Guys, I remember talking about the Ohio State versus Iowa game, being like, oh, this game's going to be good. So seeing Iowa lose to Duke and Reagan Richardson, I mean, she put on a show, 28 points, 7 rebounds, 100% from threes. How cool was it to see Duke beat Ohio State?
Well, I think one of the kind of, ironic situations about this is whenever we talk about college basketball and Duke, we don't normally say they're underdogs. We always say they're favorites because of the dominance that the men have had. But yes, this was an underdog performance by Duke's women's team, and I think this can lead to future success both in the tournament and maybe next year and going in, because this was a game that everybody probably thought, oh, Ohio State's going to win by like 10, 12, 15 points. But then Duke says, no, we're going to win by 10 points.
And that certainly was exactly it.
But yeah, that's one of the great things about college basketball is, yes, you can have maybe an idea or a prediction, but there's no real true sediment that you can make about a team that says, oh yeah, this team's definitely going to win.
Right, especially with NIL now. I mean, some players are going to go closer to home because they're still going to get paid if they go to Duke instead of the UConns of women's basketball.
I mean, going back to that matchup in the second round, Duke, Ohio State, it did certainly seem like they were going to lose that one by double digits. 16 turnovers in that game that Duke had. I mean, they were down 16. The head coach of Duke, Carl Lawson, said they were down 16, but these guys never flinched. In the huddles, they were locked in. They kept their belief, even though it felt like we were getting run out. We didn't feel like it. That was her response after the game. And it just really showed what a great testament it was to Duke, their ability to rise up in the clutch. I mean, they were down 16. They shot 51 from the field in that game. Reagan Richardson, 28 points, but she scored 10 in the fourth. And the Buckeyes shot under 30% in the back half of that game.
Right. Who do you guys have taking it all the way? I feel like it's got to be South Carolina, but do y'all think anyone can really stop them at this point?
I think that's a really outlandish take. That you said, South Carolina. No, South Carolina's taking it. I got to put South Carolina. They haven't lost yet. I think the last time they lost wasn't even in this calendar year. I mean, that's really all you have to say. It's going to be great once we get down to the Final Four. The first round and the second round, just a little bit. have been a little bit shy of the lights and the camera and the action. But once we get into that Elite Eight Final Four, everything's going to rise up. But bottom line, South Carolina's winning it. Iowa, I think Iowa's going to meet him in the end, but South Carolina has it.
Right, and that does it here for Women's March Madness. When we come back, we'll discuss a couple of minor changes we may be seeing to March Madness in the next coming years.
There's no harm in wanting to have fun while in college, but it's easy to lose track of how much you've had. Apps like Drink Control and Alkadroit can help keep track of your consumption and blood alcohol levels. If you or someone else does drink too much, the signs of alcohol poisoning are as follows: pale skin, vomiting, confusion, low body temperatures, irregular breathing, blacking out, and is hard to wake up or cannot be woken up.
Dude, are you okay? Hey, what's wrong? Wake up.
It's an exciting time of year, but it's important to be responsible. If you suspect someone is suffering from alcohol poisoning, get help immediately. You will not get in trouble for seeking help if you are underage. For more info and resources, go to UNT's Division of Student Affairs.
What's wrong? Are you stuck in your paper?
Pretty much. I haven't written anything in like an hour.
Why don't you check out the Writing Center at UNT?
Well, how do I meet up with him?
All you have to do to make an appointment is visit the Writing Center's website and either call the number or email writingcenter@unt.edu. The appointment is 30 minutes long, and the trained tutors will be able to help with brainstorming, correcting grammar, ensuring clarity, and a wide range of services. They also do walk-in appointments.
That sounds awesome. I'm gonna check him out.
So, when's this paper due?
30 minutes?
For more information, visit the UNT Writing Center's website.
Yeah, it's 6 pages.
Welcome back to Sportszone. I'm your host, Mackenzie Freeman, and we're still talking about March Madness as the NCAA committee has discussed that they might move to a no more than 80 team format. And here to give their thoughts on this is Nicholas Valpetti and Mason Brenham. Guys, I want to start off by talking about the 68 team format. What do y'all think about that first? Nick?
I think the 68 team format is pretty much perfect. I think that everybody mostly agrees on that. Each year, we all get so excited to watch it. I think that the first four has been a good addition. I think you get to see some of these 16 seeds get to show off a little more because they get to play each other rather than having to go straight against the number one. And I think it's cool because these 16 seeds get an opportunity to win a game, which they probably wouldn't have. We've seen two 16 seeds pick up wins over number ones, but that doesn't happen very often. So I think that this has showed the 16, given the 16 seeds an opportunity to showcase their skills against other 16 seeds, and it's been good.
Mason?
Well, and I think looking at the format the way it is, I know one of the major talks about right now is expanding the college football playoff and how many teams that might go to. But looking at March Madness and college basketball, I think the way they have it right now, I think it's a good format. Now, could there maybe be slight changes? Maybe. But I think overall, the way that the tournament looks, honestly, I think it's just the best format for them to have.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me into my next point of why do you think the NCAA wants to do this? The format has been the same for numerous years now. We're all used to it. It has the same appeal. So I don't think there necessarily needs to be any changes. So why do y'all think the NCAA wants to do that? Mason?
Well, I think one of the reasons why is they want to maybe bring in new teams. One of the great things about having those 16, 15 teams is they're colleges that a lot of people may not have heard of or don't know have a talented basketball program. So I think the NCAA is looking to maybe bring in those teams. But I also think, looking at it from a business side, I think the NCAA knows that this March Madness has always been one of their most successful business plans. And I think they're looking to say, hey, we want to bring in more teams to bring in more talent, but we also want to bring in more games so we can bring in more viewers.
Right. And Nicholas?
Yeah, as much as I hate to say it, I feel like money kind of is the main reason. I feel like Mason said, I feel like it would help on the business side to have more games bring in more viewers brings in more money, more TV ratings, things like that. So I feel like it would help them on the business side. And I also think, maybe not just money, but I think it could also help to give teams that maybe didn't have as good of a season, help them to showcase and sort of make up for the tough season that they had. Because I think right now you see teams, mostly with the at-large bids, you only see teams who have 20 or more wins get in through the at-large.
Right.
And I think that we might see some teams getting 17, 18 wins out of Power 5 conferences that may start to get an opportunity to play in the tournament if we expand it to something like 80 teams or something like that.
Right. And then, I mean, this kind of goes into my next question. How do you guys think this would affect smaller programs? We would see a lot more from, American Athletic Conference, Conference USA, the Mountain West especially. I think the Mountain West would be affected greatly by this because you look at them this year, Fresno State, they were decent. San Diego State, obviously, they made it to the tournament. They're good. So how do y'all feel this affects smaller programs, Nick?
I think that in some cases it may help. I think it depends on what the committee decides, honestly. I think if the committee decides to just give like maybe the bids to the 8th and 9th best teams in the SEC, I think that would be a negative because
right.
I think we already see enough teams from those conferences getting into the tournament. But like you said, if we start to see more teams from the American Conference, from the Conference USA, like the Mountain West, there were a lot of Mountain West teams that were right in the bubble.
Right, exactly.
There were some scenarios where Colorado State might not have gotten in. They were the last team that got in. If New Mexico didn't win the tournament, they probably wouldn't have gotten in. So I think that if the tournament expands and they start to allow some of these mid-major conferences to get more teams, I think that would be a positive change.
And Mason, your thoughts?
Well, I think not only does it help like group of 5 conferences, I think it also helps maybe the lower seed conferences. You have a team like Oakland who goes in, beats Kentucky, and everyone's like, who is this team? Like, we've never heard of them, but now that they beat Kentucky, everybody's like, oh, now I know them, and they even know one of the players. So I think having that exposure, not only for the group of 5 teams, but also maybe the non-major conferences or maybe like even some D2 conferences, I could see those playing, but I think just overall the image would help. So
right.
I think that's why they're looking into it. So while it may be, you want to, try to be business oriented and help bring in more views, more money, more people to the sport, I think overall it also just helps the programs because the programs not only have that exposure, but can also build upon that for the future.
Right, and one thing that's kind of interesting to me is how are they gonna, let's say they do 80 teams, right? That means that they can fit the number 1 and number 2, the champions and the champion runner-up in every single conference. But I have a feeling that they wouldn't do that if there's, let's say, 80 teams. How do y'all think they would treat the seeding? I mean, obviously your conference champions would have those automatic bids, but what happens to the next 50 or so teams?
Yeah.
Mason?
Well, I think not only the seeding, but if you look at it from a tournament standpoint, you start with 80, you go down to 40, go down to 20, you go down to 10, and then you have 5. So
right, exactly.
Do you just randomly throw in them 5 because the way in the
or do you take 82 teams or
But that's what makes the current format great because you have
right.
16, 8, 4, 2, 1. So
right.
I think if you're going to expand it, you need to look at not only how many teams you bring in, but the format of the tournament. Because unless they maybe do like where certain 1 seeds get a first round bye or something like that,
right?
I wouldn't want them to have a random team get a 3rd round bye. I would want them to have a first and then go 2nd, 3rd, 4th.
Right, and it seems like realistically you can't necessarily take the number 1 and number 2 team from each conference because, teams like Missouri or conferences like Missouri Valley, they send their top 2 best teams. Where do you place those seeds? 16 through 20 seeds, and it's, I think it would complicate the bidding a lot more than our current format.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say so, Nick?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, what would you do? I mean, you could turn the first 4 into like a bigger thing where you have like a bunch of at-large teams go up against each other, but I don't know.
Like an NIT before March
exactly.
Madness.
But like we filled out our brackets for so long with 64 teams, 64, 32, like you were saying, so, and down to the last champion. And like, what would we do for our brackets? Like, I just think there are too many questions about what would happen with the tournament, and we'd risk losing like the luster that has been on March Madness for so long, and all the things that we love about it.
Right, and speaking of things that we love about it, I mean, if they go to this 80-ish team format, Mason, do you think this tournament really has the same appeal?
Well, I mean, obviously, I don't think it's going to have maybe the exact same appeal because you're not going to get your 1 versus 16, your 2 versus 15. You're going to get more 5 versus 14, stuff like that. But, I mean, it also adds the possibility of what if a 20 seed beats a 1 seed? And, like, that would have never been heard of. And, I mean, so it can add to it, but I also think it kind of deletes some of the love and everything that we have with the tournament. So I would say it's not necessarily worth it.
Right. And Nick, what would you say about the appeal?
Yeah, I just feel like we shouldn't risk losing that appeal. It's hard to say how it would affect it because I think a lot of people are used to this format. Like even if you're not really into sports, I think a lot of people tune in for March Madness and like make their brackets because it's a fun thing to do with your friends, with your family, things like that. And I just think it would get even more confusing than it already is to try and pick between 80 teams than
Right.
just 68. I mean, it would get really confusing, I think. And I don't think we should risk losing like what we have now.
Right. I feel like if they did this, it's like the opposite of the college football playoffs. It's like, no. NCAA basketball, you're perfect where you're at.
Yeah.
You don't need to change anything. But then football, it's like, yeah, let's expand because some teams are getting robbed. Mason, do you feel like any teams above the 64 teams are really getting robbed?
Well, I mean, I know there was a couple teams this year that were obviously every year everybody's going to talk about, who got snubbed from the tournament. But that's going to happen every year, so I think the format's fine where it is.
Right, and that does it here on Sportszone today. Be sure to go follow our socials at NTTV_sports and keep those TVs rolling as NTTV's nightly news starts here in a couple of minutes.